that we're all heavily influenced by drugs, and the only reason we could play the music we played was because we're all on drugs. This is completely untrue. I have to say, actually, if I took drugs, I couldn't even play a note on my piano, because it happened to me once, and it's impossible. But so I think, actually, looking back, I think it's very sad, the drug situation. I think it's even worse today.
And why do you think the drug situation is always related with rock and roll?
It's quite possible, but it's not just rock and roll. I think the worst thing about drugs is if you have nothing in your life, if you have no direction, that is terrible. I mean, I think about, I don't know what it's like in Brazil, but in England, we have lots of kids who have no jobs, they have no real homes, they have no future. They're the ones who are taking the worst drugs. Back when we were in the late 60s, we believed wrongly that, for example, acid was an enlightening drug and would help everyone to understand the world and come to love and peace, etc., etc. But it's not true. It was dangerous. I can only say as a person, and myself, I don't like drugs because I like to be in control. And one of the things that drugs does to a person is make you have no control.
You were on tour when you started thinking about this third album, solo.
No, I was thinking...
How started the concept? How did you start
my
thinking?
album?
Your album?
Yes.
Now, your...
Okay. Actually, while we were recording Division Bell, I think it was probably certain frustrations of certain of the music that I was writing for Division Bell wasn't being used. But there's another story why I went straight into this album, of course.
Why?
Why? Because at the time of recording Division Bell, my girlfriend, now my wife, suffered depression, clinical depression. If you want to know about the relationship, interestingly, was that in the beginning, before she realized or I realized what was going on, we thought our relationship was over, finished, because she was very sad and very depressed, and she blamed it all on our relationship. And I was there thinking, why? There's nothing wrong.
I am so guilty.
Yes.
And usually depression makes people fear depression.
Yes.
You know, they fear. So they run away, they don't want to face it. And you were there, you were supportive to this.
But it's interesting you say run away, because that's one of the titles on the album. And that is part of the time when you actually escape from the fears that you've hidden in your childhood. All that really affected me quite deeply. So I had something that I needed to say in this album, Broken China, which is actually about my feelings and what I saw her suffering from depression. That's what Broken China is actually about.
Depression is related with childhood?
Yes.
Do you think so?
Well, I know so in this case. Mm-hmm. This album is actually divided into 4 parts, and the first part is childhood, because in her case, she didn't know why she was depressed, but through therapy, discovered that as a child she hadn't had a happy childhood, that her parents weren't there to help her, and emotional abuse, a lack of love, etc., etc. And she was hiding these things. And when you hide things as a child, you escape, but eventually it's going to catch up.
Do you think for yourself, this kind of melancholy, this kind of sadness is close to you?
Yes, that's interesting. You mentioned the word melancholy, because I think I tend to write rather melancholic music. I tend to like it. I like that
too,
feeling.
Yeah.
And melancholy is not just necessarily sadness, it's just all sometimes peaceful. And melancholy is an interesting emotion. So yes, in a sense, what happened to her was the kind of feelings that I find easy to express musically anyway. So it was, it's funny to say this, but writing this album, Broken China, and recording was actually a lot of fun. I certainly wouldn't want to write music to make people feel depressed.
I know.
No way.
Uh-huh.
But in the end, a musician, an artist can only express what he feels.
Do you see any difference when you work by yourself and when you work with a band? Do you feel more control? Do you feel more comfortable working by yourself?
Yes, more control. Obviously if you work by yourself, you do have more control. It's a lot of fun doing. It was a lot of fun doing my solo record, because I didn't have to persuade anyone how I wanted the sounds or how I wanted to play the keyboards. It was for me, just for me.
You work in this album with Shannon O'Connor.
Yes.
She's gorgeous. She's wonderful.
She's wonderful, yes. And I chose her because I love her voice. I think she's talking about music and emotion. I hear something in her voice that's just very magical. And that's why I asked her to appear on the album. And I'm so happy she did, because the way she interpreted the two songs was wonderful. I spoke to her on the phone and said, I'm doing an album, and I sort of explained to her what the album was about. And I said, would you be at all interested? When she came to the studio, it was just myself there and Anthony and Tim Rennick, who played guitar, and we were sitting there, and she came, and we played her the songs, and we showed her the lyrics, and Sinead, bless her, she just made a decision then. She said, I want to do it. I want to do it.
Only teenagers could talk about rock and roll, and but nowadays it's different. There are lots of bands and groups, and they are quite middle-aged people.
Yes,
How
like
do you
myself.
explain this? How do you explain it?
It's just got so much bigger.